almost like the Bitcoin notion is getting more mainstream because people are getting inflation. People are getting more and more. Oh yeah, money system is kind of, there's something weird with it. And now, yeah. But I still get a lot of craziness. Like if I tell people about Bitcoin, but it gets more and more accepted. Like the fact that like
kind of like who you're talking to as well. Like you're just talking to like the average person who is in a bunch of debt and they don't really know anything about investing and they don't even know what the heck the Federal Reserve is. They don't understand that like the government can just print money. Then they're gonna have like this off the cuff response to you, like, "Oh, you're crazy." But now we're to the point where all the suits are involved. Wall Street is involved. A bunch of publicly traded companies are involved. The biggest nation in the world, most powerful nation in the world, announced the strategic Bitcoin reserve. So anybody that like has a pulse on any of that, they understand that okay, there's something here. Bitcoin is not just going to be going to zero as like a lot of smart investors used to say a couple of years ago. And so now it's something where like if they're sophisticated in terms of like they understand what's going on like macro from a macro perspective, then they're not going to give you that like scoff at, oh, he's doing some like crypto scam.
it might be better in America than in Europe. I feel like in America it's already more developed because in America politicians are talking more about it. People are in general more educated on it. The grassroots movement is more. A lot of more companies around Bitcoin are in America. I mean, all my partners in the podcast are all American except one. So it's just a clear indicator. And I'm European, like I'm European and I almost only work with Americans. It's like the internet, like all the big companies are from America. It's happening all over again. Europe is sleeping again, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, I think eventually we'll get to that point where like every country that is under a fiat currency regime, like all of their citizens, assuming they have uh, a decent IQ, they're going to catch on to Bitcoin and they're going to start saving in Bitcoin. Yeah, I mean, it will be interesting to see how it goes because like the European Central Bank, I mean, the euro right now is probably stronger than the dollar, but a lot of people. The other thing too to consider is like if you have access to the U.S. banking system, you would think that it would take you longer to catch on to Bitcoin because like we have access to the world reserve currency and that's like a level of stability which a lot of investors have. Whereas like if you're living in Argentina or Zimbabwe, where like overnight your currency can get debased by 50%, then you would be much more inclined to be learning about things like Bitcoin and be adopting Bitcoin and be using Bitcoin, which like if you listen to Alex Gladstein, that's like a lot of what he talks about is like we are privileged in the United States of America and in places where you have access to like the global banking system, then like you're privileged to be able to have access to a bank account, but 40% of the world is unbanked. They can't even use a bank account. So how does somebody in like a small village in Africa send money to their family in the United States or their family in Europe? It's very difficult. And that's like one of the problems that Bitcoin solves, obviously.
We already started in the podcast without really starting in the podcast.
Yeah.
But before we get started with all the topics, maybe you give the viewers and the listeners some background of like who you are and especially why you're excited about Bitcoin.
Yeah. No. Just some background on myself. I didn't find Bitcoin until probably around 2019, 2020, I would say. And it was like anybody who was like paying attention to, I guess, crypto at that time, they had heard like Coinbase was like the most popular app in the App Store, and it was just like a lot of crypto mania. I had a couple friends who they had made like millions of dollars trading crypto, and they had bought some token and it had gone up a bunch, and it was just like a mania, like around right before, yeah, the 2019, 2020 is when the government gave out those stimulus checks and people they were sitting in their homes, they had nothing to do because of all the COVID shutdowns. And it was just like absolute mania at that time. That was when I first heard about it. And I wasn't like I didn't immediately see that like Bitcoin was the only thing to really be paying attention to. And so I got involved with a lot of just the crap coins out there. Like I don't even want to mention them just because they're so garbage. But I mean, a lot of it was just like you get caught up in that like get rich quick thing, and you just want to make a quick buck, and that's like the enticement there. And I had never been like super interested in investing or really like economics or any of that. I mean, I came from like a sports background, and at the time I was playing basketball at a small uh, Christian college in the middle of Montana, and like I obviously was starting to think about like what am I going to do for my career and how am I going to make money, and that was like I think the whole crypto thing. When you first hear about it, you start to think about the whole like the financial system as a whole and what is money, and that was like that's the question that gets a lot of people is you start to look into like if you're going to be investing in these cryptocurrencies, like you should at least know something about it. And so you start to see all the resources that are out there and like why does this thing have value? Why are people paying for this? And then like you start to get a little bit deeper, dig a little bit deeper, and then you start to like understand the macro picture of like what is the dollar, how is the dollar created, why are people buying these cryptocurrencies, and then from there I think that was like what sparked it. And then it probably wasn't until 2021 that this was right around the time that El Salvador announced Bitcoin as a legal tender, and me and my buddy were just like, hey, let's go check it out. Like this seems like it would be a cool trip. And I had seen some things on Twitter of people that have been there. And like around the time, this is like right after Bukele came in, and they like previously were the highest murder rate per capita in the world. So all my family was saying like, no, don't go, like don't do that. And I was like, it's fine. Like we're going to like the safe area, the El Tunco, like Bitcoin beach spot. And so we went there, and I ran into a bunch of Bitcoin maxis there, and I was like trying to talk to them about all the crypto stuff, and they were like, no, like stop, like you should only be paying attention to Bitcoin. And like I was like, oh really? And they started like explaining some things to me about it, like why Bitcoin was different than everything else. And that was I think like when it first got in my head. And then from there was like I started following all the Bitcoin maxis on Twitter and reading all the stuff that they were writing. And it was at that point that I was like, oh, this is like going whatever. You have the epiphany of like this is like a technology that is going to change the world, and the whole fiat currency bubble is a massive problem. And all you read the Bitcoin Standard, which is like a lot of people tell you to read that first. I wouldn't necessarily recommend somebody to read that first because I mean, Safe and On is phenomenal in the way that he articulates it from like where we started to how Bitcoin is the solution. But for many people, that's just like not the best resource to start with. But it gives you the context as opposed to like we used to be on a gold standard and now we're not. It's been a 50-year fiat currency experiment, and it's degrading society and a lot of the problems that we have in life and food, the medical medicine for people, and obviously like unemployment and jobs and the mental health overall of society. I mean, you could just the architecture, like if you just look at how lower quality our architecture is now, a lot of it's just caused from fiat currency debasement. And you go down that hole, and then you realize Bitcoin is a solution, and all you want to do is spend your time studying Bitcoin and how you can help accelerate the adoption of this technology. And that was where I started. This was probably as a sophomore in college. And then from there, it was Bitcoiner jobs. I was applying to every single job on Bitcoiner jobs, like trying to work at Swan. That was like the apex of Bitcoin companies, I feel like at the time. Which fortunately that didn't work out because they had all those layoffs shortly after. But I started with DCA Signals, which I don't know if you know Lee is. He's done a lot of stuff with like the bitcoinnews.com. But I was doing stuff with him, and that was just like a good experience I did a lot of writing, like writing articles and stuff. And then from there, it was the Oklahoma Bitcoin Association, which they're still around, but they did a lot of policy development for companies. They were based in Oklahoma, but we passed two bills in the state of Oklahoma for the right to self-custody and another mining bill. And I wrote a newsletter to a bunch of senators that they had on their list for them. And then from there, I became just as I got more involved in Bitcoin and I wanted to accumulate as much Bitcoin as I possibly could, I wanted to start mining Bitcoin. That was like, and I'm sure many Bitcoin maxis, like they come to that threshold where they're like, they understand Bitcoin and then they understand mining. And then they understand that like, well, there must be some sort of advantage to people mining Bitcoin. You have a lower cost basis than the people that are just buying Bitcoin on exchanges. And so then you ask yourself, well, how can I start like accumulating Bitcoin through mining? And for me, that was like, well, can I mine in my house? And it's like, well, no, not really. If you want to profitably mine, you need to buy like thousands of dollars worth of machines, and you need to have 220 volts in your house. And it's just not they're super loud. They generate a bunch of heat. You get past that. And you're like, well, that's not necessarily going to work for my small apartment. And then you get into like, you hear all the cloud mining. I mean, you really got to do a lot of due diligence and research to like vet some of the stuff that's out there, because a lot of it's just a lot of fluff, and you're not exactly like, you can get burned really easily. And that's the story of like a lot of people that have tried to go down that rabbit hole, is they get burned by getting into some sort of like scammy mining investment, and then they end up with less Bitcoin than they could have had just buying it the normal dollar cost average way. So fast forward, I found out about simple mining through River. I used River as one of my exchanges, and I think that they used to do hosted mining, and then they ended up phasing that out, and now we partner with them. So anybody that wants to ask River about hosted mining, they send them in our direction. Simple mining. That was when I first heard about simple mining, and then started out as a client. Got my first S21. That was probably, I think, January of 2024. So it was right before the 2024 halving in April. But I got the S21. That was like the new machine at the time, the brand new one. And probably like a month in, I started just like, I had all these questions. Like I wanted to read some in-depth material on mining versus buying Bitcoin, like a comparison report of like the data between the two, and portfolio allocation. And it was something that I just was like, I had all these questions, and there was no material out there for them to be answered. And so that was when I had a conversation with Nick, who's our COO, and was like, hey, I have all these questions. You guys don't have any content or material on this. Like, why don't I just help you guys create it? And that was where it started. Was I started writing a bunch of research reports for them and articles for. I mean, they didn't really have any newsletter at the time, but fast forward to now. I mean, my title is director of research, but I do, I mean, anything from like content and emails to podcasts, partnerships, or conferences. I do a lot of conferences, stuff like this, going on podcasts and talking and educating clients is a lot of what I do. But it's very enjoyable because I get to spend a lot of time researching Bitcoin and Bitcoin mining specifically, and then distilling that into information of for people that were where I used to be. Because like ultimately, like as a creator, you're not creating content necessarily for like someone at square zero or someone that's like way ahead of you. You're creating content for someone that's like two steps behind you. That's like when you create the best content, it's like for yourself 2 years ago, where you were at, and the questions that you had, and the pain points that you had in trying to understand something. That's the best approach to have. And since, I mean, I started our Substack, we have over 8,000 subscribers there, and I try to write a weekly piece on that every single week. But yeah, I mean, that's the story of how I got to where I am now.
I love that. Really nice. And it's that there's a lot in there.
Yeah.
I find it interesting, your story with Bitcoin maxis, because if you are on the Bitcoin maxis can be quite annoying, but
Yeah.
they seem to be right in the long run.
Yeah.
And I hope I can call myself also a Bitcoin maxi. At least I'm Bitcoin only and only doing Bitcoin stuff. But the what qualifies as a Bitcoin maxi and what doesn't seems to change also from week to week. And sometimes I'm like, yeah, that's me. Not that's not me. So I just call myself Bitcoin only. That's super interesting how you got through that, and how do you see it? What would you call yourself a Bitcoin maxi? How would you define that?
Well, I think there's levels to it. There's like the toxic Bitcoin maxi, and then there's all the way. I mean, there's definitely certain categories, because you see people that are obviously bullish on Bitcoin, and they understand like the macro thesis of like all fiat currencies are dying. Bitcoin is going to be the base layer for global money. Like that's the base case. So there's a lot of people that understand that, and then there's the people that are like, I would say the toxic maxis, where they understand that and they think that if you're allocating to anything else besides what's ultimately going to be the base layer of money for society, then you're stupid. And at this point in time and at the rate of adoption that we currently have, it's going to outperform anything and everything else. And if you're wasting your time investing in anything else, then you're dumb and you don't actually understand what Bitcoin is. And so that would be like the max level 10 of Bitcoin maxi. And then there's like, I would say the level of people that are somewhat traditional finance like background, and they manage portfolios and they understand portfolio allocation and they understand risk management and all of these different things. And so maybe they have all of these buckets, and they want to, they have a certain bucket that's for Bitcoin, but then they also have the Bitcoin treasury companies, and they have all of Bitcoin derivatives, and they have their stocks that they like, and they understand why Bitcoin's going to be successful, but they're not fully ported, so to speak. And so I would say there's those people, and I mean it's probably a mix between the two. And then you have like, I think there's a all the way to like level one would be somebody that's still messing around with like XRP and all of the other cryptocurrencies out there, where they think like, oh yeah, Bitcoin's number one, it's the best, but there's all these second bests that are out there, these unregistered securities, and they're gonna potentially like outperform Bitcoin, and then I can swap back into Bitcoin, and like that would probably be similar like to the traders where they're trying to trade Bitcoin, where it's like, oh well, I'm gonna time the top and be able to sell it at the top and then buy it back at the bottom, and then continue to do that and end up with more Bitcoin. Like there's all those people that they understand the bull case for Bitcoin and why it's going to be successful in the long term, but they're stuck up on all these like hiccups that like only less than 5% of people are successful doing those things. And it's like the people that win, that probably do the best as a Bitcoin maximalist in the long run, they're either dead or they went to jail. Like the Hal Finney, he had a bunch of Bitcoin, and then he passed away, and he still has all of his Bitcoin. Whatever his Bitcoin wallet is, he's never sold it. And then you have the Ross Ulbrichts, they went to jail and they had a bunch of Bitcoin and they couldn't access it, they couldn't touch it. And 20 years later, they come out of jail and they still have the Bitcoin. And so I would say in terms of like the traders and the cryptocurrency, crypto bros that are trying to jump through all these hoops and do all these things to outperform Bitcoin, like it's to no avail.
It's a good thing, and I like the reasonable approach of like their Bitcoin will be the best performing asset, but there are two things in my opinion that will be a uh, better return on investment usually on average for you. That's like investing in your own knowledge and skills. That's like a hard thing for you to beat, because this will give you more power to DCA more Bitcoin. And then obviously, I mean, that's kind of related to each other, but investing in your own company or career or like whatever you have going, those are the only two things that I see have a very reasonable and very realistic chance of actually outperforming Bitcoin. Outside of that, I don't know. There's not a lot. Maybe you find some interesting angel investment, or you find some interesting
I mean, yeah, it's all
crazy stock.
timeline too. Like in the short term, in the next month, there's going to be some penny stock or something out there that's going to outperform Bitcoin. But in the long run, like if you look at any chart over since 2009, priced in Bitcoin, it's down and to the right. And so I think that's like, yeah, it is difficult to come out. Like Michael Saylor obviously thinks that his strategy is going to be something that outperforms Bitcoin just because of the leverage. I mean, what's better than Bitcoin is more Bitcoin. Is that what he is? That's what he says. And so I'm sure people have many different thoughts about what they think about that, and if that's going to be the case. Is a company that buys a bunch of Bitcoin going to be able to, I guess, in dollar terms, perform better than Bitcoin itself? And that's something to think about. But ultimately, at the end of the day, like money is just a tool and it's a means to an end. And it's something to be able to think about, prepare for your future, preserve your wealth, uh, be able to have a plan for your family and your loved ones, and that's like ultimately what it comes down to. And like, yes, it's the best investment in terms of protecting yourself from fiat debasement and the erosion of your purchasing power. And that's why I think Bitcoin maxis are so passionate about it, because that's like what it represents. Is it represents an ending of the theft that comes from central banking, and a solution that's based off math, and it's not going to cheat and steal from you.
But even Sailor, I like that example because I think even Sailor likes Bitcoin. I just quickly asked ChatGPT. There's only in 2024, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 times where he sold MSTR shares. And guess what he bought with that? Like, I don't know, but it's private. But I would be highly surprised if he didn't buy Bitcoin.
Are you saying him personally?
Yeah, he personally sells shares, and it has been disclosed. I think it was popular a few months ago, or maybe like half a year ago, where he sold shares, and it's like a public record of like multiple times where he sold strategy to buy privately Bitcoin. And he himself also says what I think he said on multiple podcasts, that he prefers buying Bitcoin directly. So it's really interesting. Even the guy himself is like, yeah, like Bitcoin is the thing. And obviously he likes his stocks and he holds a bunch of strategy, but it's interesting because he never bought more strategy stocks. He always bought more Bitcoin and sold some strategy stock.
Well, I suppose that's the position that like his company takes as well, because strategy doesn't do stock buybacks. They don't just buy a bunch of strategy stock. They hit the market, they at the market, sell more, issue more equity, and they buy more Bitcoin. And so like if Michael Saylor was a company, it would be strategy, buying as much Bitcoin as they possibly can.
Absolutely. But I want to get back to Bitcoin mining, and it's such an interesting thing because you research deeply and you know a lot about Bitcoin mining. We've talked, I think, like 2-3 times at this point already, and I'm fascinated by Bitcoin mining, and I'm slowly coming into Bitcoin mining more and more. And I was also mining myself now, thanks to you. You really got me started with Bitcoin mining also. But what is one thing that you think most Bitcoiners really don't understand about Bitcoin mining, that you see most of the times as you speak probably with a lot of Bitcoiners and see what they understand and also what they might lack?
Yeah. I mean, I would say the main thing would be just like glossing over what Bitcoin mining actually is. And like if you look up like what is Bitcoin mining as like a simple Google search, you'll see a bunch of articles that attempt to explain it. And the consensus response that you'll get is like Bitcoin mining is solving complex math problems to validate Bitcoin transactions and secure the blockchain. It's like a very word salady, jargon filled response of like, you tell that to most people and they're just going to be like, what the heck are you talking about? And that's actually something that, like, I recently was at this conference in Texas, and it was a traditional, it was for alternative financial freedom through alternative investments was like the theme of the conference. And so it had a lot of real estate investors there and gold investors and private equity and all of these different like companies and individuals and investors that were there. And we had a booth there, and we were the only like Bitcoin mining related company that was there. And I was probably asked that question from everywhere from like a boomer to just like a traditional finance guy to like a 10-year-old. There were some younger kids there, and just like, what, tell me about Bitcoin mining. Like, what is Bitcoin mining? And it made me think about, I mean, after I've answering it hundreds of times, it's made me really think about like, what is the best way to explain this to people in a way that's just not going to like estrange them and make this technology seem like it's this super complicated thing, when it's really not. Like, ultimately Bitcoin mining, there's two things. There's like Bitcoin mining, the process, and then there's Bitcoin mining, like what is a Bitcoin miner doing? And you're taking a machine and you're plugging it in, and the machine is consuming energy and it's looking for a number in a very large set, and the machine is getting rewarded with Bitcoin. Like, that's ultimately what a Bitcoin miner is doing. And then it's not like people say, well, Bitcoin miners are trying to solve these complex math problems. It's not, there's not really anything complicated about it. It's a computer that's generating trillions of lottery tickets. that's trying to find a number in a very large set. And that's like, there's no complicated math. I mean, it's doing that through hashes, generating hashes, taking a block and all of the information that's in a block and generating a hash of that. And then that's going to generate the number. And depending on how many leading zeros it has, it's either going to be the right number, the nonce, but no below the nonce value, and it's going to win the block, or it's not. I mean, the majority of the time, it's going to be below that. Like I wrote a thread last week, and it was on this concept, but it was like putting the scale of Bitcoin mining in perspective. It would be like trying to find one specific grain of sand on the beaches of 10,000 Earth-like planets. That's like the number that all the Bitcoin mining machines in the world, they're looking for one grain of sand on the beaches of 10,000 Earth-like planets. Like, or choosing one specific star. I mean, it's hard to quantify because we don't know exactly how many stars there are, but it would be like choosing one specific star from all of the stars in the observable universe, or flipping a coin 79 times and getting heads every single time.
Thank you for watching this video. This was only a snippet of the podcast. And if you want to watch the full episode and get all of the context of this episode, you can click right here or here. Oh, maybe also here.